topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Camping Show. This is CW Gets. It is Wednesday, May 19th, 2021. Hey, I just had a great idea today, and I just asked my producer about this. I said, you remember, I've been listening to a lot of Larry Lujack this week, and I don't know why, but he was a famous disc jockey, did most of his career up here in Chicago at a couple of stations. And he had this segment called Animal Stories. And I thought, something, it would be kind of fun because I know everyone has a camping story and, to some degree or another. And I thought it might be fun to do something along the lines of animal stories, but with camping stories. So what I'd like to do, I'm going to do a little test on this. So if anybody has the desire to send in a camping story, and the funnier they are, the better. They don't have to be funny, but funny is always good. You can type out the story, send it to me, email it to me at cwgetsoutdoors@yahoo.com. So it's CWGOETZ outdoors@yahoo.com. So we'll see what we get. And maybe if, we read your story, we pick your story and read it over the air, we'll send you a free T-shirt or a free camper trailer or something like that. We've got a great show here for you this evening. Tonight's episode is Venomous Snakes Found Around the World with our special guest, Brandon Boyles. 32-year-old Missouri herpetologist Brandon Boyles has been working with reptiles for 28 years, devoting the past 17 years to studying various snake venoms. Brandon also serves as chief herpetologist at a local breeding facility in Missouri and was the first person in the U.S. to breed the Martinique lancehead. Brandon's mission is to utilize his education and experience to inform and educate those who share his passion for reptiles. In fact, Brandon recently surpassed 1 million followers on TikTok, which is one of the outlets Brandon uses for educating others about various snake venoms. And with that, welcome to the show, Brandon.
Hey there, how are you? Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day.
I was just going to say, what's your weather there?
So far, so good. It looks like the rain's holding out, so I'm thankful for that because we've had rain for the last week. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think we've had about the same, and we're going to get some more. In fact, we got a little bit more. I was out running errands today, and it started to rain, but cleared up. But I understand storms are on the way. However, I have some good news for the people in my area. We're going to have 84 degrees, 85, 86 this weekend for some canoeing, camping, kayaking, all that kind of good stuff. So I'm excited about it. Plus, I'm going to be doing a free tent camping clinic here Saturday, the 22nd at 1 o'clock p.m. in LaSalle, Illinois, a place called Pulaski Park. So it sounds like we're going to have some good weather for that. That usually never works out. Usually plan an event, you get rained out or something like that. But looks like this year we're going to do all right with it. Well, Brandon, several weeks ago, herpetologists Mark Etry and Brian Jeffries were on the show, and we talked about the venomous snakes found here in the United States. Tonight, we're going to talk about the venomous snakes from other parts of the world, including Canada, Europe, Australia, Asia, and then we'll also review the ones, again, found here in the United States. Now, with the exception of New Zealand and Antarctica, the way I understand it, Canada is one of the places with the least number of venomous snake species, at least in the places we'll be talking about here this evening. So let's start there. So what venomous snakes pose a threat to Canadian adventurers?
In all honesty, as far as venomous snakes in Canada, it would be a real treat to see one. They are extremely rare. The odds of coming across one would be very slim, but there are 3 species to talk about that there's always that chance that you could come across hiking if you're in the southern part of Canada.
Okay.
We have our Northern Pacific. A lot of people know these as a western rattlesnake. We have the Eastern Massasauga rattlesnake, which here in the United States, it's endangered throughout much of its range. And then the prairie rattlesnake, which is just a pretty cool little species of rattlesnake, which spends a lot of time or spreads a massive portion of the United States. They're quite common throughout their range, but of course not as common in Canada.
Yeah. And if I'm looking at these snakes, and honestly, I mean, I can tell they're rattlesnakes, but they all look so similar, don't they? I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the different species. It looks like to a layman like myself. Yeah. Now let me ask you, what specific regions of Canada do each of these snakes exist? Where can we find each one of these?
So, like the Northern Pacific is found like by British Columbia. The Eastern Massasauga is the Georgian Bay area, and also by the eastern shore of Ontario. And I might be messing that up. I'm really bad with geography, so bear with me there. The prairie rattlesnake is southern Saskatchewan. I can't say that word very well.
Yep, sure.
Yes, and Alberta. So pretty much, as far as I know, pretty much the southern part of Canada. And
let me ask you this. Are there any, like we have here where I'm, near Chicago, we've got snakes that like the water and they like to swim in the water. Do any of these species do that? Just curious.
Yeah, so rattlesnakes are typically always seen as a pretty dry, arid snake, but the Massasauga is actually known more of like a swamp rattlesnake. They're typically found by like duck hunters. They'll get down into the duck blinds, down into the marsh. They do enjoy water, which actually makes them have a pretty potent venom because, needless to say, living that close to water, the prey can get away relatively quickly. But we're still talking about an animal that's this big. So to us, it's not very seldom would it ever be considered a life-threatening bite.
Okay.
There is also the desert night snake I did want to add, which is a species that is like, I do believe it's rear fang venomous, but it would never be life-threatening to a person. But they also live in Canada.
What did you just call that? What is that?
A desert night snake.
But it's a rear. What'd you say about the fang?
I'm pretty sure it's a rear fang colubrid. So it's actually related to like corn snakes and rat snakes and milk snakes. But they do have a little bit of a venom in the rear of their mouth.
Okay, that's gland. So that's a little unusual. Otherwise, it's the other way around or in front, and interesting. Yes. I didn't know that. I mean, that's something I've never heard of. So Canadians are pretty lucky in that regard. They don't have to worry as much about venomous snakes up there, at least not the way we do here in the States and other places like we're going to be talking about. But am I right on that?
Sure. Yeah, definitely. And identification in Canada is easy. Does it have a rattle? If it doesn't have a rattle, you should be okay unless its rattle completely broke off, which is very rare, but it does happen in some instances. Yeah. But easy identification. I mean, can't get easier than that.
Well, they have all the cold weather and all the bugs and all the snow. So maybe it's a fair exchange that they don't have to deal with as much of the venomous snake problem as we do here and in other places. So let's move to Europe. What venomous snakes can we find in some of the countries of Europe, Brandon?
So Europe is actually one of my least strong suits when it comes to venomous snakes, but we can talk a little bit about the ones I know about. So there's actually quite a few of different vipers throughout Europe. Most of them look pretty identical, honestly, to the untrained eye at least. But the ones that I would consider like top 5 in most interesting, most outstandish would be like your common adder. This is something that anybody could come across because they have an expansive range. Honestly, venomous snake-wise, they have probably the most expansive range of any venomous snake in the world. Oh, wow. These guys honestly stretch just so far. And what's interesting is they can have that beautiful pattern like this individual right here. And inside the same litter, we could have completely black individuals. So they actually, the black ones will come out early morning or late night. And then the patterned ones will come out midday when the sun's too hot for the completely black individuals.
Interesting.
So they don't cross, they get all different prey items. They don't, get inside each other's way essentially.
Right. That's an interesting pattern. Can you flip that back up there again, Roxy? I've never seen a snake like that. That's pretty cool.
Quite a few of the European vipers kind of share that zigzag-like back pattern. Like the snub-nosed viper was another one that I was going to talk a little bit about. I honestly don't know a lot about those snakes. I know that they're quite a bit rare. But they are a very interesting species. I do believe there's a subspecies of that's actually extinct. So, yet again, it shares the pattern. It would definitely be a medically significant bite. Just a very interesting looking snake.
Now, okay, so now specifically, what countries you're not exactly up on all that?
No, I'm not real great with all that. So, as far as the common adder, that is most of Western Europe. That pretty much covers all that, and even on into Eastern Asia. As far as the common adder is actually the only snake that we've found within the Arctic Circle. They can get far north, so that's pretty crazy.
Wow.
As far as the stub-nosed viper, that's the Iberian Peninsula is where those are found. Then, as far as, like I mentioned, that those are medically significant, we also have the long-nosed viper, or this snake is actually the most medically significant of all the European snakes for the most part. I mean, there's always that outlier, but these guys get relatively big comparatively. They could get 2, maybe even up to 3 feet, and they do pack a pretty potent little punch. What's interesting about a lot of the European snakes is they are very small, but they also make up for it in attitude. They are very grumpy little guys.
That's something I was going to ask you about. As I was preparing for the show, I thought, I wonder if snakes, like dogs, have their different temperaments and attitudes and that sort of thing. And so you're saying they really do.
Yeah, 100%. I have worked with some Levantine vipers, the Ottoman's viper, which is one that we'll talk about here in a second. And honestly, the second I enter the room, they are just huffing and puffing and trying to look big the whole time. Wow. They never calm down. Everybody else is just like, do you have any food? But these guys are on it. They just don't want to play.
Wow. I mean, do they play nicely with each other or just things that aren't a snake? I mean,
anything that moves, they're just not very happy about. So if we was to put them together, we would just one on each side of the cage. Once they know each other or around, they'll be fine then.
Yeah.
But
once they duke it out,
they fight it out. Once they figure out, it's not food and it's not my hands, then they'll get along with them. Get along with each other.
That's interesting. Now, Mark and Brian, we talked about, the best thing to do with a snake, if you find it in the wild, of course, and you're hiking, is just back out, go the other way. And I remember the conversation to the point where we said, well, generally, they're not going to chase you. They're not going to just attack you for no reason. They're going to chase you or anything like that. Now we were talking about domestic snakes in this way. Now, do any of these, and I'll ask you when we go to these other countries, but do any of these European snakes, like you're talking about this particular species that when you walk in the room, they've got an attitude going on. Is that the case with some of these snakes that it doesn't matter. They might just be having a bad day and maybe they will be on the not defense, but the offense actually.
I was going to say, anytime that you have them cornered, of course, it becomes a more dangerous animal. When I was hiking out through Arizona, I was a 12-year-old kid. This is really what got me into Venomous. I had a flashlight, and I went to step down middle of the night, 2 hours away from the closest hospital, and there's a Western diamondback rattlesnake just sitting there coiled up. And I'm 2 inches away. I'm just like, oh, no, this ain't good. So back up slowly, and we're good. And nothing happens. Okay. I'm like, wow, according to everything I learned on TV, this guy's going to follow me home and try to kill everybody I've ever loved. But that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah.
So I actually tried to find a stick in the desert, very hard to find, and moved him a little bit, trying to hear him rattle. Never rattled, didn't get defensive whatsoever. You give them their room, they'll give you theirs, or yours.
And so does that, and does that apply to all of the species, all of the, I mean, I don't care if venomous or otherwise, or are there some like the ones you just mentioned, when you come in the room, they're just pissed off? It doesn't matter.
They definitely get an attitude for sure, but it's still, you have to make that next advance. It's not that we're offended. And that's actually one of the bad things about the black mamba. Everybody knows these are the most notorious venomous snakes on earth, the most feared. They can see from a far distance. Most snakes can't. 45 feet, they can see you moving. And they're watching you get closer and closer, and they're freaking out there. And so in the back of their head, they're like, oh no, this ain't good. He's stalking me. He's going to kill me. And at 7 feet now, they're so far on edge, they can't take it anymore. If they can't get away, they're coming right at you. So that's what makes them a dangerous animal. If they get cornered and you don't see them, all bets are off. They don't play games.
Yeah. 45 feet. That seems like
they can see. They hunt birds, so they want to be able to see where that bird is. Oh, he's coming closer. I need to keep my eye on him, and they'll actually monitor him.
Interesting. Wow, that's pretty good. What are most snakes? What's their vision capabilities?
That's very speculatory, but I mean, for a lot of the vipers like these, a lot of times the vipers we're talking about right now live within the rocks, so they don't need to be able to see more than maybe 6 feet out, just to be able to see, because they use their tongue, they use their sense organs. A lot of these have heat-seeking pits, so they can register heat that way. Like the bushmasters I work with, I honestly don't think they can see at daytime at all. But they use those heat-seeking pits on everything. They'll follow me through the room, but when I touch them with the hook, they jump. They're like, what was that? And
I see.
It doesn't register.
Interesting.
So I don't think a lot of these vipers can see more than a couple feet, in all honesty.
Okay. So it really, when they sense you're there, that's with the pits that we talked about. I remember that on the last the episode with Mark and Brian. It's the pits that sense the heat that they can sense you by means of those pits.
Smell and vibration. They can feel the vibrations of you walking.
Oh wow!
They're very keen to that. Okay. So a lot of times you're not going to see the snake on the trail because it will feel you moving and it's going to get out of the way. Now, they've also done studies that show that they don't pick up the vibration of like chainsaws or a motorcycle running, but they will pick up I don't know the difference. Wow. I don't get it, but that's what the studies say.
Yeah, some sort of frequency thing. That's interesting. Well, that falls right in line with the dogs, and they can hear frequencies that we can't. So that's interesting. Let's move down the yellow brick road, as it were, to Australia. What species of venomous snakes inhibit Australia?
I'm flipping back and forth in my notebooks. So bear with me, but
that's okay.
What's interesting about Australia is they have 172 species of snakes overall. About 100 of these are venomous to some degree. Only about 12 pose any threat to you or me. Now, I should say life-threatening, because a lot of these mildly venomous snakes can still mess you up pretty good. They'll get you to a degree you're not feeling your best. 32 of the species I mentioned are actually sea snakes. Australia has probably the most sea snakes of any place in the world.
Sea snakes
around the reefs. Yes. Okay. And all those are pretty potent for the most part because they have to be able to kill the fish quickly. But unless you're swimming, if you're hiking, you're never going to come in contact with that guy. Needless to say.
Right. These snakes are on the surface of the water. They're not going in or under the water.
Sea snakes will go down into the coral to hunt the fish. And there's actually was a discovery back, I want to say it's like 2007, of the first ever keeled scaled. So it had a rough scale sea snake. And we always thought, like, if it's in the ocean, it's got to be smooth to move fast, Well, comes to find out this guy was actually living in the coral. And the coral would beat most of these snakes to death, with the waves coming in. But this guy had the rough skin just to protect him.
Interesting.
But these animals are very toxic. And Australia has the most toxic venomous snakes on Earth.
So let's back up a second. So some of these snakes, the ones you're talking about, these sea snakes, they can actually go into the water and you won't see them, but you could step on them. and get bitten that way. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. Now, if you have like a neoprene diving suit, the odds of you getting bit through that it's nil. It's not going to happen. I've seen people picking them up, and you can do that, but that's very dangerous. Don't try that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you shouldn't have any issue. You're finned out and in the ocean, you're good. Just enjoy them. Try to keep them away from your face, but otherwise, get your pictures.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be way out where we're talking. There's coral and things like that. We're not talking about
Yeah.
any beaches or anything close to the shore. Am I right?
Well, they move around quite a bit. They'll come up and hunt. Now, they don't really come on shore, hardly ever, like ever, for any reason, unless something's wrong. Their tail is designed to move through the water, not to come up on shore. Now, if it does come up on shore, that would actually be a crate, not a sea snake. Crates actually lay eggs, so they have to come up on shore. We'll talk a little bit about those and the Asian snakes, but just very cool.
So, yeah, I did not know that. That's interesting. So there are snakes that actually go and stay. How long can they stay in the water? I mean, because they breathe. I mean, they have lungs.
They'll come up to the surface of the water and sit there and sun and breathe and do everything they need to do. Then they'll dive down for the fish, and they'll go down for, 10, 15 minutes, but they can stay under. I've heard reports of like 2 to 3 hours if need be. But that's like everything's went wrong for the snake.
Yeah. And I'm wondering, how do they take, I mean, they have to take oxygen in somehow. I mean, how do they stay there so long and not,
I don't think that they're actually taking on any oxygen from their skin or anything of the sort like that. I think it is mainly a breath hold, but I don't know that to be 100% true. I was reading some literature a while back, but I forgot exactly what it stated. It was pretty interesting. I do remember that.
Yeah. Be careful if you're in Australia and you're out there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. So, yeah, go ahead, because you were going to talk some more about this.
So the great part about Australia, I love Australia because they have some really cool snakes. But the interesting part about Australia is they also have some of the best medical team in the world. They have the best anti-venom in the world. This stuff works. So they might have, 2, maybe 3, possibly even 4,000 snake bites a year, and like 3 people die. So their anti-venom works well. So we'll be talking about the top 5, and the eastern brown snake's on there. It's considered to be the second most venomous snake in the world, and this snake can literally kill you in 15 minutes. There's a lot of crazy stories out there, but we're talking 13 minutes, you're fine. 2 minutes after that, you're dead. Their venom is just ridiculous.
And this is the kind of venom that shuts your vital organs down. Am I right? This isn't the kind. There's 2. And what are the 2 types again? Refresh my memory.
There's a million toxin types, but
no.
I mean, that everybody
sees
is the hemotoxin and neurotoxin.
There you go. That's what I was referring to. Okay, so the hemotoxin is the one that shuts your vital organs down. Am I right?
So hemotoxin, heme means blood, so it actually attacks the red blood cells. Now, typically, if a hemotoxin, you also have cytotoxic properties, which means it eats the flesh. So that's like a really bad rattlesnake bite. You'll see somebody with just a really messed up arm. That's what happened.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, a neurotoxin actually blocks the nerves. They have it's kind of like an amyloid plaque, essentially, and it just covers the nerve to where it can't fire back and forth. Okay. So therefore, it just shuts off all responsiveness from the brain.
So the neurotoxin, that's what shuts your heart down and things, your lungs and things like that. Okay.
Yes.
We had
toxin, stuff like that.
Okay. We had a question here. Tunis. You said only one species of sea snakes lay eggs, so all others produce live young. Is that right?
To the best of my knowledge, all sea snakes produce live young. Don't totally quote me on that. If you're writing a report, don't quote me. But as far as if they lay eggs, they're actually considered a sea crate. So it will, like the yellow lip sea crate's a great example. They will come up on shore and do all their nesting behaviors, but they're way better in the water. You can tell by their tail, they're clumsy on land. They're not good at it. They'll go back into the water and live out their life, but they'll come up only to nest for the most part.
Interesting. Okay. Now back to the venoms here. You're talking, they have some of these snakes, these venomous snakes over in Australia are some of the worst in the entire world. Is that right?
Yeah. So this right here is an inland taipan. That's the most toxic snake, drop for drop. A lot of people get deadly and toxic confused. one drop of venom from this snake can do way more damage than any other venom on Earth that we know of, snake-wise.
Wow.
So one bite from that snake could give you about 100 meg of venom, and theoretically up to 150 meg of venom. That theoretically it could kill 100 adult men, or it could kill 250,000 mice. So
with what was it with one? What'd you say? How much?
With one bite, which would be 150 meg of venom, milligrams of venom. Which,
wow.
That would be the dried weight.
And how many people? How many men could that kill?
100 men, theoretically, if you could divide it up, and didn't treat them. Now, this snake lives so far out into the middle of nowhere that no one ever comes in contact with it. It was originally discovered. I actually got this wrote down. It was originally discovered back in 1879, and we classified it as the wrong species. And then it was discovered again in 1882, and then we didn't see a single one up until 1972. They found 13 out on an oil field.
So these are very remote. Very, very remote.
Very remote. No one, 12 or 13 bites have ever been recorded, and those were all from herpetologists. No one's ever died from that bite.
Okay, I was going to ask you what regions we find each of the ones that we're going to be talking about, but let's just start there. Specifically with that snake, what region of Australia, or maybe you don't know, but if you do,
very middle, essentially, of the outback. No one lives there. It honestly looks like Mars, and that's why they're so toxic. The little mice that they do find, they have to kill because they're not going to see another meal. And it's actually a rat, and those rats are very aggressive, so they have to knock them out quick.
Wow.
But as far as the top 5, we also have black snakes, which not the black snakes like we think of here in America, but like the red-bellied black, blue-bellied black. There's a snake called the mulga, which is called the king brown snake. I know, counterintuitive, brown snake, black snake, whatever. But this snake actually has probably the 3rd highest venom load of any venomous snake on Earth. It's almost comparative to a king cobra. They give so much venom. Bites are pretty rare all in all, but they are extensive throughout Australia. I mean, they cover almost the entire of Australia. Where they don't cover, other black snakes cover, like the colettes and the red-bellied and stuff like that. One I think we should talk about is the death adder. The death adder actually looks like a viper. It looks like an adder. But that's actually just closely related to everything on Australia. It's another elapid. It's more closely related to a cobra. It just filled a niche that no other elapid was filling. So just a very interesting little snake.
Wow.
Then we have multiple species of the taipan, but I think we should mention the coastal taipan because people do actually come in contact with these. And that's an outstanding specimen. I've never seen one that red.
Wow.
But they're typically a little bit more brown, but they have that white head. And
looks like a snake with a sunburn, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's actually found in the northern coast. The death adders are pretty much all over Australia, different species and different subspecies and everything. And then we should touch base on the tiger snake. So the tiger snake was considered to be the deadliest snake in Australia. These kill more people than any other snake in Australia up until the cane toads invaded Australia. They actually introduced those to take care of a beetle issue, and these guys started eating the toads and started killing them off. Now they're not very common at all.
What was it you just mentioned? What was it that
the government actually? I'm pretty sure this story is right. The government introduced the cane toad, which is a type of toad. It's a very big species of toad, and they actually are found in southern Florida as well. They're very invasive. They outdo pretty much every natural predator natural fauna out there, other species of toads. They get huge. Like I said, they'll literally get to be 3 pounds. They're a big toad. They're as big as a small cat.
Wow.
But they're also poisonous. So the snake will try to eat it and the snake will die. So we've actually seen natural selection. We'll go back to the Colette snake real quick. They've noticed the Colette snake numbers are falling way back. But the Colette snake that they've noticed here recently actually has a much smaller head, and they have a much thicker body. So they think that thicker body and smaller head has actually been bred into these snakes over the last 30 years. More body mass can sustain more toad toxin. Smaller head, it can only eat such a big toad. It can't eat a massive toad, so it survives.
Now, when you say these are bred this way, is this from breeders like yourself? Or is this just in the wild?
Natural selection.
Natural selection.
Natural selection, just all happening at once. We never thought it would happen this quick. Like we've seen in a couple other species, but just so quick. It's pretty amazing.
That is, that is amazing. Well, isn't it funny how nature
So I have one more snake in Australia to touch base on, if you don't mind. The common brown snake actually outdid the tiger snake. It's now number one. It is the winner. Like I said, it has probably the fastest acting venom of any venomous snake on Earth. And this one actually kills 60% of the, not 60% of the bite victims, but 60% of the deaths from snake bite in Australia happen from this species. So it outdoes every other species combined.
What's the name of that snake again?
The common brown. They are common too. They love to move around. You will find them around your house. Like that is an animal that is always moving. They don't have a territory.
Is that simply because there's so many of them, that high percentage like that, just because of the population that
they love rodents?
Oh wow,
they love rodents. So if you have chickens, you're literally inviting them to your house. I mean, it's just what it is. So since everything else has been kind of pushed back because of the cane toads, these guys are like, I don't like toads, but I love mice. So they're out there in record numbers.
Oh wow. I mean, that's a great rodent control program, but there's some drawbacks for
Catch 22,
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And is that pretty much what we're going to talk about from Australia?
Yeah, as far as the Australian snakes, that pretty much covers it. The common brown snakes is eastern, western. It's pretty much all over Australia. Like it covers almost the entire continent. So,
I like that tiger snake. I mean, that's an attractive looking
beautiful
snake. Can you put that? Can you rock? There you go. I like that. It just looks beautiful. Oh, yeah. But like many beautiful things, very deadly. Very deadly.
For sure.
Rivers can be that way. I'm going to take just a quick second here. And we're going to do a commercial in a bit, but let's see here. We had a question. What are your thoughts? And this is just going to break this up a little. What are your thoughts on the pythons in Florida? And the reason I mention it now is because I know I'll forget when we get to the United States snakes. But just briefly, what are your thoughts on the pythons in Florida? By the thoughts, I'm assuming that she means the whole overpopulation of them.
So it's a real issue. It's not good at all. I definitely think that we need to try to eliminate them the best we can. There's a lot of feedback on people who keep snakes like myself. A lot of people are, a lot of laws are being passed against us, but it's not necessarily our fault. They've actually had a law in place for, I do believe, the last 5 years now that states that you have to microchip your pet snake if you live down in Florida, just in case if it gets out. Every python caught in Florida out of the 6,000 some odd pythons, they've never found one with a microchip. So it all seems to have came from that original Hurricane Andrew letting all those out.
Wow.
Honestly, it's so Burmese pythons, it used to be Burma, now it's Myanmar, is exactly like the Everglades. I mean, it's perfect. It's the perfect habitat for them. Yeah. So, but the bad part is your pet cat is the worst invasive species in the world. They've drove 66 species to extinction bird-wise alone, not to mention the lizards and rabbits and everything else. So the Burmese pythons are a problem, but the house cats are also a problem. Feral hogs are also a problem. So are your cane toads. Those are also something we need to take care of. And those have nothing to do with reptile keeper. So that's my personal opinion on that.
Yeah. Johnny and Colleen, thank you for that question. That's pretty cool. And I'm running a little bit behind schedule. This is so interesting. We could probably break this into 2 episodes, but I didn't plan it that way, unfortunately. Let's go to, let's see. I understand there are a huge number of venomous snakes in Asia. So go ahead and give us a list of the different species that exist there. But as I wrote here, we won't have enough time to go through all of the regions where each of these are found. So go ahead.
There's about 150 species of venomous snakes in Asia. A lot of those are these little green vipers that live in the trees. We're just going to talk about the white-lipped pit viper. This is a snake back in the war times, the Vietnam War. They were talking about the two-step. A lot of people refer to these as two-step. That venom's not bad at all. Honestly, if you got bit, your finger might rot off, but you shouldn't die. But most bites from these little green vipers happen to the upper part of your body. So it's not a good place to be bit. No one wants to get bit in the face. But all in all, they're not that bad. But we have king cobras in Asia, which are, needless to say, biggest venomous snake in the world, 18 feet long.
Holy
I have a picture of my king cobra that's
18
15
feet?
foot. Oh, yeah, just monsters.
How big a diameter are we talking about? Oh, is this one of them right here?
Yeah, that's like a 15-foot male right there.
Yeah, we had that used that in the promo for the show on Instagram and Facebook. But yeah, so that's how long? 13 feet or 15 feet? Did you
That
say?
was like 15 feet. Yes,
Wow.
Massive monster snake.
I thought maybe that they get that long. They're like a foot in diameter or something like that. You know? Yeah.
No, all in all, they're not too awful thick. They are pretty quick. They still hold that speed. And like I said, we have the yellow-lipped sea crate. It's essentially a sea snake, but it does come up on land to lay its eggs. We have 100 pacer, which is Deinonychus deinonycutus, scientific name. I love that scientific name.
Yeah.
But that snake, the sharp-nosed pit viper, is what a lot of people call it. A lot of people, like I said, they call it 100 pacer because they think that you only make 100 steps after getting bit, but that's completely false. They are pretty venomous. Don't get bit, but it's not life-ending very often. We have the long-glanded coral snake, which is apex predator. This thing eats baby king cobras. So this guy's actually got a gland that goes down 2/3 of its body. That venom, like I said, will actually block. You know how most neurotoxins are presynaptic, postsynaptic neurotoxin. They'll actually block the nerves to where they can't fire. Yeah. This guy actually makes them fire all at once. So very few deaths have ever occurred. But if you was to get bit, you would actually probably die because you would get so fatigued your heart couldn't beat anymore.
Oh, wow.
You see venom.
What a beautiful snake, though. I mean, that
very
was
beautiful.
Very, very cool. I've never seen snakes that color before. All right. Well, Roxy, you got a commercial queued up for us. We're going to do that. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about, we're going to skip over the United States one, and really because Mark and Brian, we really did cover that. And I thought, well, we'll review if we have time, but we don't. But when we come back, I'm going to have you debunk several myths if you don't mind doing that for us. Okay.
Sounds
all right. Great. So don't go away. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with more of the Camping Show on W4CY Radio and Talk 4 TV right after these messages.
It is time to go camping. Introducing Campground View's virtual tours. You can tour the campground, see the sites, see if they are available, and click to book your perfect spot. Hit the open road and explore the amazing places found in nature. We make it easy to discover, find, and book your site so that you can go have the fun and freedom you seek. Campground View's virtual tours make it easy and simple for you to see where you are going.
Brandon Boyles on the Camping Show. Sorry about that, Brandon. Hey, different levels of severity. I think we just cut out there for a second. Did we lose each other? Are we back in the program, or did I? Everybody, okay. Well, I'll repeat that. Before we talk about the different levels of severity regarding bites from each of these venomous snakes, are there any myths that you would like to debunk? Let's debunk a couple of myths that you know of that are out there.
So the biggest myth that I would love to touch base on, well, there's two. One of them is snakes chase people. This is not entirely true. So if you're inside the water swimming and a cottonmouth is coming at you, more than likely it's looking for land, doesn't realize you're a living thing. It's going to try to get onto you just because it doesn't like open water because it thinks fish are going to eat it. There's also a study done on the twin-spotted rattlesnake that shows it will sit out on this rock and sun every single day. It will always go to this crevice, and it will always take the same route to get back to its crevice every time. So if you happen to be standing on that crevice when it wakes up from its nap, it's going to freak out and go right over your foot. You're going to panic and think that it chased you back home. And that's not true. You got to turn
Interesting.
around and look. Okay, he's not chasing me. We're okay. They can charge, 3 to 5 feet. Big king cobra, maybe 7 feet, but they're not going to continue to chase.
Okay, interesting. How about let's see. Yeah, so I mean that kind of falls in line with a lot of the same, the snakes chasing, and I thought I had one chasing me once on the water. But turns out that was probably not the case. Snakes are very curious, aren't they? By
sure.
nature. Yeah, I heard that's probably what was taking place. Any other that you'd like to debunk?
A lot of people say that the only good snake's a dead snake. I hear it every day of my life, but this isn't true. Back in 1976, we made the discovery that there's an ACE inhibitor in the venom of a fertilans down in South America. Fertilans is the most feared snake in all of the Americas. We found out that we could derive a drug called captopril out of that venom. This drug is actually within the top 20 medications ever discovered. This ACE inhibitor drops the blood pressure of someone who suffers from high blood pressure, saving their lives. I do believe 1/3 of the United States population at some point in their life will suffer from high blood pressure. Figuratively speaking, we're looking at 110 million people saved from this medication that's derived from the snake venom. Not only that, southern copperhead venom, there's a protein in the venom. It's called corticostatin. I do believe I'm saying that right. And this protein will actually kill breast cancer and brain cancer cells. They're thinking that they can use it as an anti-tumor medication.
This is the copperhead in the United States that you're referring to.
Yes, the southern copperhead specifically. And what's interesting about snakes is this will be the same species. They'll be 20 miles apart, and this one will have a completely different venom than this one. So if this one goes extinct, it's okay because we still got this one. Well, unfortunately, that one maybe could have cured Parkinson's. So we really don't want that to happen.
Interesting.
And it's going to take us a while to analyze all this venom and figure out what's really out there.
So there are some specificities. Is that the right? Did I say that right? Specificities.
For sure.
Nailed it. It's my $100 word for the day. In between the same species of snakes, then is what you're saying.
For sure.
Interesting. Let's Mustang 774 snakes are very beneficial. I was going to talk about that. You sort of took the question away, and I liked. I'm glad you did that. But we often talk about all we hear is negative about snakes, right? And the only good snake is a dead snake. But as you just mentioned, snakes are very, very beneficial in medicines, and I know this from just where I live on farm. The bull snakes out here are great rodent control, beings, because they eat a lot of mice and even rats, so nobody likes that stuff, especially when you've got kids around. Now let me ask you this. We've got about 5 minutes left here. Let's just quickly recap, and we can do this for the United States, or we might have time for that. Let's talk about the severity of each of these venomous snake bites. And let's go back. Let's start back in Canada. How bad are these? And the ones that we talked about, the most venomous, are we talking about like the ones you mentioned from Australia? You're going to be dead in like how many minutes it was? Very short time. Do we have that concern in Canada? The ones in Canada?
No, honestly, the ones in Canada, the only thing you'd have to worry about, I'm not saying that you shouldn't seek medical attention, because you should. With the right medical attention, you should survive 100% of the time.
Okay.
But at the same time, if you went into anaphylaxis, if you happen to be allergic to the venom, if you had an EpiPen on hand and was able to administer that, there should be no reason why you should die in the field from that snake. Get to medical attention. They can address it. You probably will need antivenom, but you shouldn't die. Okay. There's really no worries of that. You might have some tissue damage, but you should be okay.
How about the ones from Europe?
Ones from Europe, they have claimed, we're talking, even untreated, we're talking maybe 3% fatality rate, and that's not going to the hospital at all. So if you go to the hospital, you should survive everything there too, unless you're allergic. And what's interesting about some of those vipers is if you're allergic to bees and wasps things, you might be allergic to their venom. There has been research that shows that in the European vipers.
Interesting. How about the ones from Australia? Like the top ones we talked about. And really, like there were several that were really deadly from what you're saying. They're biting and it's minutes. You don't have a chance. You don't have an opportunity to go to the hospital. Yeah.
In all honesty, if you got bit by anything in Australia, you should pressure wrap that limb, the extremity, and immobilize it. The pressure wrap will actually stop the lymphatic fluid from getting to your lymph node and then being distributed near your blood and killing you. So I've known a person that got bit by a eastern brown snake, which should have died in 15 minutes, just like we know. And within 12 hours, he was still sitting up, talking, doing fine in the hospital. They were stirring the anti-venom, getting everything ready. When they released that pressure bandage, out. But at the same time, the anti-venom had already been administered. It was already in his bloodstream. So he came back after he went out for a while.
We're talking tourniquet and cut off the blood supply. I mean,
not at all. Don't cut off the blood supply because then it's a much smaller area. You just want to pressure immobilization.
Slow it down.
Which is just, essentially just kind of compresses the leg, compresses the arm to stop the lymphatic fluids.
Oh, I see. Understand. Interesting. How about, and by the way, what was the one that you said that you have 12 minutes and you're dead? Which one was that again?
The common brown snakes, about 15 minutes.
Okay. Those are the ones you're going to find everywhere, what you said.
Everywhere in Australia, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in Australia, yeah. I mean, everywhere over there.
But their anti-venom works really well. Not for the babies quite as well, but the adults, it's very good anti-venom.
How about the ones in Asia? How bad are those?
Asia doesn't have the most toxic snakes, but they do have the deadliest snakes. So in Asia, the people bitten the most are the people the farthest out away from medical treatment, places that don't necessarily have the refrigeration to keep the anti-venom. So it is literally an epidemic. Bad part is it has a lot to do with the economics of how much money these people have in order to pay for the medical facilities. So in India, there was a study done from 1990 to 2010, I do believe it was. I know it's 2000 to 2019 that showed 58,000 people a year died from venomous snake bite, putting it up over 1 million people in those 19 years. Wow. So, like I said, Australia, 3 people, America, 5 people. Asia's just not good. We really need to figure that out. We need to help those people.
Let's touch on the United States real quick, and we can wrap this up. Now, the top 5 in the United States and about the regions that we can find these.
The timber rattlesnake's a little worrisome for the main fact that sometimes it will have a neurotoxin in its venom that's very toxic. But at the same time, we're talking about very isolated localities of these snakes. What's great about them is there was actually a study that showed an adult male can eat 4,500 Lyme disease carrying ticks in a single season. And somebody that suffered from Rocky Mountain spotted fever, I love that snake. I mean, that's my hero because they won't bite unless you literally step on its neck. Those guys are very placid. Eastern Diamondback, because it will give you 800 meg of venom. That's a huge venom load comparatively to, like we said, the taipan, we have 150 meg of venom. This will give you 800, and that's scary. Western Diamondback, because, they're just like the Eastern Diamondback. They very big, huge venom load, not the most toxic, but still scary snake. We have the Mojave rattlesnake, and what's crazy about that one is it will actually change venoms throughout its range. So there's certain ranges that have what they call a Mojave toxin, which isn't touched by the Crofab anti-venom. Same way with the Southern Pacific rattlesnake, there's a high elevation of these, which you can literally get 60 vials of anti-venom and still die. Like that's actually happened. So the high elevation Southern Pacific is a terrifying snake. You have coral snakes too, but they don't hardly ever bite anybody. So they actually stopped making anti-venom for a while for that species.
That is interesting stuff. So to finish up here, the best advice that you can give anybody if you come upon a snake, whether you think or know it's venomous or not, if you're on the trail or whatever, is to do what?
Don't kill it. 40% of people that get bit were trying to kill or handle a snake. 40 to 60%, just depends where you live. I think it's like 40% of people were intoxicated during this. So don't drink. Don't mess with the snake when you drink. Don't pin a snake. Being a professional herpetologist, I've only pinned a snake 3 times in my life, and those were for medical procedures. I didn't want to do it those days either. And I'm really good at what I do. If you're off by one scale, that bank can hit you. Don't do it.
Yeah.
If you see it, you come up on it, do what I did when I was 12 years old. Back up slowly. Check your surroundings. Back up, get out of strike range, make sure you're not going to step on anything else, and walk out.
That's
Enjoy
excellent.
it from a distance.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Leave well enough alone. As my grandfather used to say, leave a sleeping dog lie.
Exactly.
So a lot of makes a lot of sense. Brandon, where can people follow you on social media?
So I love the YouTube because I can do long form content just like this, talking about all sorts of vipers from Latin America and king cobras and inland taipans. My TikTok's growing quicker than anything. Like I said, we're at 1 million. We're right there. I'm so close. Like I was sure I was going to be there. I'm literally within 1,000 or so. I do have a Facebook. I do have an Instagram. If you need to message me, those are probably the best places to message me. But as far as content, I would say TikTok or YouTube would be the best.
That's excellent. That's excellent. Well, this has been a very educational show. And Brandon, I want to thank you for being my guest here tonight on the Camping Show. It was a pleasure having you here with us. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great. Very welcome. Well, I hope you'll tune in for next week's episode, Extreme Paddleboard, Jared, with my special guest, Jared Munch. Until then, thank you for tuning into the Camping Show. This is CW Gets, reminding you, learn more, do more. See you next week.